Okay.
Hi there, this is the Ukes with podcast with me, Alex Beds, aka Ukes with Alex. This is the second series. The first series was really popular, surprise hit. I don't know why it was a surprise, but I always thought my conversations were interesting. But it turns out that there's a handful of you out there in the world that do too. So, series two, we're going to kick off with somebody who should have been on series one, but due to various reasons, technical limitations, and all that, uh, it just didn't happen. And then last week it was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen. But he's here now. My guest today is Phil Doleman. How you doing, Phil?
Hello, Alex. I'm very good, thank you. Very good.
Amazing. Right. Well, yeah, I've been wanting you on for a really long time. I actually had a customer in today for 2 hours that all they did was talk about how much you've influenced them as a player. So my first question to you is, how did you fall into the ukulele?
Yeah, it's interesting. I started off playing bass and guitar back in my teens, back in the 80s, and played in a load of bands. Then I cleared off to London because my wife got a job in London. And in London, I was just playing acoustic guitar around the clubs. And then we had my first daughter, who is nearly 20, and I took her along to a little music group. And that music group just had CDs, little toddlers music group at the library. And I said, wouldn't it be great if we could do live music? And they said, this was brilliant. We'll see if we can get some little percussion instruments. And if you can bring your guitar along, that'd be lovely. A guitar and a change bag and a pushchair don't fit. So I literally saw a ukulele in the window of Hobgoblin in London, grabbed it, it goes under the pushchair. It was just for playing little kids' songs with them, and I wasn't precious about it like my expensive guitar. The kids' sticky fingers could go on it, and that was it. And then thanks to the internet, I started discovering that people were doing really cool things with the ukulele, and it wasn't just for playing kids songs or a toy. It had some amazing music with it, and it just grew from there, really.
Oh, that's such an organic way for something to happen.
Yeah.
Normally it's, everyone else's story seems to be kind of, you start. I suppose you did play music before, but going into it from that. So teaching, I guess, has always run alongside all the performing you do because I've always known you more as a performer, but my customers correct me. You're definitely a teacher.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I'm actually trying to, now we've had lockdown and things are starting to happen again. I'm trying to get back to being a performer because I was always a performer. I taught, I think, because you have to if you make a living at it. There's
Yeah.
no other way of doing it. You've got to do some teaching and workshops and as many different streams as you can if you're going to keep a living going. But I was always a performer, and then really it was the first ukulele festival at Cheltenham, the first ukulele festival of Great Britain. I was playing that with Ian Emerson as the re-entrance, and they just said, "Can you do a workshop?" Because all of the performers are doing a workshop because it was based on the Irish festivals model, and that was often based on American festivals, and there were
Ah,
workshops, and and I went, yeah, and Ian said, Phil will do it because he wasn't going to do workshops. And so, yeah, I started doing a workshop then, and I had to hurry away and come up with something. And because so much of my work's been in the ukulele world, I've just got known for doing workshops and teaching. And then with lockdown, all the videos,
yeah.
hundreds of videos.
Well, let's talk about that because you are the only ukulele personality, except for Mark Gallagher, where I briefly dabbled, but I actively joined your Patreon and I was blown away with I mean, it's like Disney Plus for ukulele. It's
Thank you.
the amount of content that
Yeah.
you've put up. I actually, do you know what? It's demoralizing to other people because I thought about it. I was like, do you know what? I think Phil's probably forgotten more than I know. Um,
I mean, I think I've forgotten. There are songs on there now that I learned, chartered, taught, and now can't even remember that I taught them, and I have to go and
yeah.
look to see if I've done them.
I've done
Yeah,
that. I've done
yeah,
that. Yeah, I'm doing a workshop in a couple of weeks, and I did the workshop 4 or 5 times last year, but I've let it completely escape my head, and I'm going to have to relearn my own workshop to teach my own workshop. It's a strange world we live in when
yeah.
being a musician, isn't it? So apart from teaching and performing, then a lot of musicians always have kind of strange kind of diversification in terms of what they do. Have you done any other interesting things with music as a part of kind of earning a living from it?
Yeah, I mean, if I go right back, I had just played in multiple bands at the same time. So that was, if you didn't get a gig with one band, you got a gig with another band. And so I sort of had a folk band I was in, and a rock band that I was in, and a duo that I was in. So that was one way of doing it. And I wasn't really earning a living then. It was so I would have considered myself semi-pro, but really in the sense of I didn't have a job. So there's semi-professional in that
Yeah.
sense. It wasn't
Semi-pro by yeah, like not by choice. It's
yeah.
yeah.
And then I went off to that period in London where it was just me and a guitar. And for that period of time, I I was basically not a full time musician. I was working in London. I found a job down there. I was working in schools with special needs kids, and then I was going out in the evening and doing gigs. And it was when I gave up work to look after my first daughter and became a house husband, if you like. That's when I suddenly had time. And about when she was one, I moved back to Derbyshire, where I am now, and started picking up the odd gig because I was making contact with old friends from the area from years back.
Yeah.
Gigs started coming in, and after a few years, when my second daughter was born, 2007, that's when I got together with Ian and we formed the Re-Entrance, and that was when we started getting busy. I mean, we were doing hundreds of gigs a year.
You were the first ukulele UK act that I really associated with. You know, I've been doing this for 14 years this year, but you were one of the only ones who were really out there playing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and when you played at the shop, you attracted a really big crowd. I remember it was the first really big crowd we had for a workshop.
Doing that, yeah, yeah. It was interesting because really now looking back, it was 2007 to 2012.
Yeah,
So
sure, a
literally
lot of time.
5 years, but we did so much in those 5 years. It feels like a much longer period of time.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, because we were busy, and there were all the gigs that weren't ever listed as well. So there was corporate gigs and weddings and private stuff that never went on the website. So
yeah. It's how
we
the
were
mother ukers live now. They've kind of naturally
yeah,
taken that role, I think, in the
mm,
UK kind of spectrum of music.
yeah,
No, it was great stuff. I mean, I've always been a big fan of the song Mr. Blue Sky, and I love the chord progression. It was the first time I'd seen kind of a ukulele chord progression where it worked in its own way. And I
yeah,
think, you know, it was a natural precursor to how pretty much everyone seems to treat the ukulele now. You know, a lot of fingerstyle players, especially, you were
yeah,
doing that as a duo very, very early on. So, you know, credit to
yeah.
you. I've always had massive respect for you just
Oh, thank you.
based off of
We had
that.
fun. We had fun taking the songs to bits, and finding out
Yeah,
how they worked. And because we'd both been in covers bands, we already knew how to be in a covers band.
yeah,
We just had to somehow figure out how to do it on two ukuleles. But we knew the rest of it. We could sing harmony, and we figured out, work out solos by ear and things really quickly because
yeah,
we'd had the grounding in playing in covers bands. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. But we got out at the right time because a lot of our act was based on it was comedy, but it was comedy balanced against doing it as well as we possibly could. So it was a joke, but the joke only paid off when you then did the song really well.
yeah,
Otherwise, the joke wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have lasted.
yeah,
So you would start playing the riff to a rock song, and the audience would go, "They're not going to, are they?" And then we would, and then you get towards the solo, and people would go, "Yeah, but they're not going to do." Oh, they did, and that was kind of how the joke worked. But when we did the first time we did Cheltenham, not as the re-entrance, just as me and Ian.
So, do you know roughly what year this was? Just
Yeah, exactly when it was. We finished in 2012. Our last gig, brilliantly, our last gig was Derby Assembly Rooms, which is now no longer there, but that's the big venue in our
right.
hometown. So we went from playing in someone's garden for our first gig in Derby to playing the big venue in Derby for our final gig. And we recorded it,
Oh,
not knowing it was our last gig. And last year, just during lockdown, we put out the recording of it as a limited edition CD for the
amazing.
whole gig. But yeah, that was 2012, and we'd already been booked for Cheltenham 2013. And then around about this time of year, so we hadn't even done the last gig yet, we hadn't done our final tour, we didn't know it was our final tour. The number of times one or other of us had said, do you know what, let's just jack it in. It was fun, let's just, and the other one would always talk them round. And that was the one time
Yeah.
where one of us said, I think this is just the time to end it. And I went, yeah.
Do you know,
Oh,
it's being a
right, then.
duo as well. You haven't got that third person who,
Yeah.
yeah, not making it about me, but I've been that exact
Oh,
scenario. I
yeah.
remember I was
I think
playing in a
everybody
restaurant.
has in every
Yeah.
band, duo, whatever, at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in a duo. It was the same thing. My bandmate of 16 years, he said to me, do you know what? I think the end of the year I'm done. And I remember at the time being like, well, what with the covers and the restaurants? He's like, no, I think I'm done with the original music. And I remember being like, oh, playing a song. And then the end of the song just turned to me, I was like, do you know what? I think I am too.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's, it's funny, isn't it? You kind of keep each other going. But 5 years, I mean, you did a lot in 5 years.
We
And
did. We did many hundreds of gigs, but then we did chat. They'd kept us on. We said, "Will you keep us on the bill, but as just as Phil and Ian?" And we did largely original, instrumental, jazz and ragtime stuff. We did a little EP that was just us doing fun stuff, the stuff we used to jam, and we
yeah,
wrote some tunes, and that was great. And we didn't know if it would work and whether it would be accepted or not. And as we were standing backstage waiting to go on, we watched every other band go up on the stage and play the entire re-entrance set between them.
really.
We watched Sam Brown went up with her big one, and then she did Mr. Blue Sky, and she did Ace of Spades, and literally we were going, thank goodness we are doing half an hour
Yeah.
of original and obscure jazz, because no one's going to do that. And we would have had to have literally gone, can't do all of these big ones. Somebody had done Hit Me Baby One More Time, which we'd done at every single gig. Someone had done Ace of Spades, which we'd done at every single gig. They were the ones that people expected from us.
It
So
might not have even been necessarily a conscious thing. I think it's just in other countries. I don't really remember. I followed the American kind of ukulele scene, and you had James Hill doing kind of very technical. He was using the ukulele more as a workstation than than a ukulele. But no one was really doing the covers thing, and now it's an entire subgenre of the ukulele. I mean, it's the rise of YouTube as a ukulele tool was around 2010. So it's funny, you definitely got out of it at the right time, but you were the earliest, I guess, professional musicians making that act work. I'd love to be corrected if anyone's watching this on YouTube. No, by all means, comment. I'd love to go back and have a bit of a history lesson on that time. But you mentioned the Delta blues and the jazz, which is the thing that I most associate you with. I love Delta blues on the ukulele. It's one of my favorite genres. It's not something that there's not a massive amount of history on, is there? But
yeah, yeah. But
there
there's little
is.
bits, little
Tell
bits.
me, tell me all about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I can reach up here,
Oh, here we go.
this was sent to me by the wonderful Will Grove White, which is, if you can see that, with it's still got the original plastic on. It's never been played. From the 1970s. This is Rabbit Muse, and Rabbit Muse there playing his ukulele, and
Yeah,
this is 60 Minute Man, which is it's got some blues on it, but it's also got some standards and some old time tunes. He was very much a showman. So it's a bit, he'd play the flute on one song and there's a bit of tap dancing on another song. He would literally throw everything at it because he was one of those kind of medicine show performers where you
the
drew a
world.
crowd
I
in order
love.
so someone could sell stuff.
I love that act made it onto vinyl at some point
Yeah,
in history. I
yeah.
love that.
It was recorded. Will told me the story about it. He found out the person that recorded it from the info on the back and tried to get in touch with them because this was late on in his life. This was in the 70s, and managed to get hold of. I think it was their daughter who said, "Oh yeah, we've got loads of them in the garage. How many do you want?" And he's got multiple copies of this. And he heard
Right.
me play a Rabbit Muse tune on a live stream, and sent me a message saying I've been looking for people to give the rest of these to. It's in the post. But he also had one called Blues Muse, which is much rarer, which
Right.
is all blues. That was one where obviously they'd seen a gap in the market and said, right, we want a blues album, and all of the tracks on it are more or less identical apart from the lyrics. It's
Yeah.
playing
Well, that's
exactly the same ukulele part, but you know,
I love that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, so there's one example. Who would you say is the one that got you into that genre of music on the ukulele? Was it Rabbit Muse or?
No, I didn't really know about him. I think it was a combination of seeing, well, I mean, seeing Del Rey, because I
Hmm.
was already aware of Del Rey from a guitar work when I was mainly playing guitar. And when you used to buy VHS lessons from the shop, I had
Right.
a guitar one of hers on cassette. And then I saw her then I got a ukulele, and then I saw, hang on, there's this one by Del Rey, and I like her guitar one, so I'll get that and learn a few things from there. I also had some of the Bob Brosman material,
Yeah.
again, because I'd had his stuff years earlier on VHS when I was playing guitar. So they sort of got me started. And then the rest of it really was pretty early on, was me figuring out how to do stuff myself. Because I've never been one for slavishly copying stuff. I know a lot of people say I want it to be authentic, so I'm going to play exactly what Robert Johnson played on that album or whatever. I'm going to tab it out and play every last little slide and bend and whatever. And I was never really one for doing that. I quite like to do things my way.
That's not
Because
how that genre works, is it? It's not
yeah,
how
yeah,
that
that's
the
exactly it. That's
mechanics
how
of it
blues works.
are
Yeah.
inspirational, improvisational.
Yeah, and because there wasn't a lot of blues material out there, and the people that were playing blues were also doing that. They were taking it from another instrument and bringing it over to the uke. I was just thinking, well, how can I get this stuff onto this instrument? And of course, that's exactly what me and Ian had been doing in the re-entrance, because we were taking stuff that didn't belong on the uke and putting it on the uke. But to my, my delight, it all worked really, really well. It seemed to sound right for the period. And mix in with that the stuff that's a bit jazzier and a bit more ragtimey and a bit more jug band. And I'm a big fan of jug band music, and that's play it on whatever you can get your hands on. So if lots of your jug bands have ukuleles in them, and and similar things. So a lot of those guys from that era had the ukulele moniker. That's not a new thing. Like ukulele, we've got like Ukulele Simon and people like that now. And there was lots of people who put ukulele in their name
Yeah,
right back then. But quite often they weren't playing the ukulele; they were playing a tenor banjo. But
I
people
didn't know that.
didn't know what it was. The tenor banjo was really common, and often they tune it like a ukulele or like a baritone uke. And yeah, so there's people called ukulele this and ukulele that, and you can't find any sign of them playing a ukulele, but they are playing a four-string tenor banjo.
Yeah,
People
I
might
know
not.
that the earliest baritone ukulele music, the Vega company came out with was written really just tenor banjo tuning. Like they didn't really know what they were bothering to write. They just knew that they'd released an instrument they needed to make music. So
Need the music.
I've got a copy of one of those books somewhere, and it's in CGDA. And you think, well,
Yeah,
how I'm still having problems trying to make these instruments tuned to that for customers right now. Like,
yes.
what were
No,
they
it's
thinking in
crazy. My,
1958?
my my tenor banjo. I play tenor banjo in CGDA.
Yeah,
I have never attempted to put a ukulele in CGDA because I know for a fact that even in steel strings on a banjo, that A
yeah.
is that close to breaking all the time.
The low C as well. I mean, you've got to have a delicate touch because I've been working with strings for over a decade, and just even if you used a classical guitar low E, you you're still the actual length of the fretboard is just
Yeah,
the scale is just not there. So
yeah.
you're always compromising to try and get the tuning you want. Sorry about
Hello.
that. Yeah, I ran
He's
out
going
of
to play a
battery.
tune. Quick, leg it.
No, I love the way you handled that. I might even keep that in.
Hello. Hello on there.
So yeah, you've got a baritone there.
I've got baritone here, and this is one of my kind of little secrets. When I do baritone stuff online, it's always DGBE. But a lot of the time when I'm playing it, particularly on recordings, I am in C, G, B, D,
Okay.
which is plectrum banjo tuning, or the long four strings on a five-string banjo in the tuning that was more common before they started tuning them to a G chord. They used to have, if I had my C back up to D and just had D, G, B, D, that's five-string banjo tuning. now,
Yeah.
but that bottom C, and now I'm playing down here, and I'm in the key of C, which means if I'm playing along with a soprano uke on a recording, I'm not either playing up the neck and essentially playing the same thing,
Yeah.
or playing something down here that really doesn't work very well
Yep. No, I
because the
love
inversions
it.
aren't right or it's difficult. So I'm on my home key is C, and I've got a nice big fat C on the bottom.
Sounds
Uh,
great.
so I
It
do that
sounds
all the
authentic.
time. Yeah, and it blends really nicely on recordings with the soprano uke. So that's my kind of little recording secret on the baritone is drop your D down to C and your E down to D, and with a low fourth on it, suddenly you've got the bit of the spectrum that the soprano doesn't have, and you blend them together nicely.
My method's slightly different. I actually went down a similar road but got different answer. When I was recording a lot of two ukes together, I started using baritone a lot more. I found that I just started tuning the baritone down a tone because I liked the voicing of those chords more. If I was just this dark undertone for the lighter, fluffier ukulele on the top.
Yeah,
So it's interesting. You've gone, I'm going to try that tuning. Anyone at home, I'll put it on the screen there for you now. And
excellent,
me and Phil will get to work on a signature set of Phil Doleman strings available
brilliant.
one day soon at Southern Ukulele Store and World of
for the
Ukes.
for the tuning that just you and I will want.
No, you'd be surprised.
But, man,
Since I've been doing my own strings, the amount of strange inquiries I've had that are consistent. So you think when you get that first email, you're like, this is unusual. And
yeah,
then a week later, you've realized you've had three inquiries of the same thing.
yeah,
People want to try something new. People love the ukulele. They're lifers. They're committed to it. They
yeah.
want to be playing around with it forevermore.
Yeah,
Um,
I do mess around with tunings a lot. Often I've got one tenor. I'm a small uke guy. The baritone I treat as a completely different instrument.
yeah,
So my soprano and concert, they're my size. I've got one tenor, although to be honest, it's a vintage one, so it's closer to a concert. But that's tuned down to B flat,
yeah, like they used to
down
be.
a tone. Yeah, like they used to be. So it
Yeah,
feels exactly like my smaller ukes in terms of tension. But if I'm playing a tune in a nasty key like B flat, I can just pick that one up and play it as if it's in C,
yeah.
which is what
Gonna
they
do.
used to do. If you look at the old sheet music, the piano part is in B flat or E flat, and the chords are in C or F. And there's no names over them, they're just diagrams. And then at the top it will say, tune your ukulele too, or put a capo on this fret, because it was all about making it accessible.
Yeah.
And
It's
again,
funny. That's only really
recordings are
changed.
art, you know.
It's only really changed. I did a video a few weeks ago. I'm very into the tenor ukulele. I love the Hawaiian side of things a lot more. But I've been researching for a video recently how the ukulele in the UK kind of came about. You're actually someone I was going to get in contact with about that. And one thing that really struck me is how how buoyant the ukulele market was in the early 1920s. Every music shop in the country, they were trying to find people in Europe that would manufacture something that could be sold. And it reminds me now of the popularity of the ukulele. I mean, you're more experienced than me with the early music. But aside from George Formby, were there any musicians out there that people should look out for if they want to really get to the roots of the ukulele in Europe?
In Europe, well, I mean, I'm not really an expert on it, but I think one of the things that's really important about the ukulele was that at the time that Formby was doing music halls and was world famous, there are adverts in the back of trade magazines and the stage and things like that, for acts. That was where people in the pre-internet and TV and things age, you got your paper and you looked and we want singers, dancers or whatever for this show, and they were literally advertising for people who did not play the ukulele. They did not want any more ukulele players
Love it.
because there was everybody and his dog was turning up at the theatre going, I've got an act. And they were like, we've got
It's
enough
the same
ukulele
act.
players. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I
And so
don't want to hear. I don't want to hear "Ye Old Baby One More Time" or "Ye
yeah,
Old."
yeah, exactly. And that was so. And of course, you got all these instruments that they were mainly banjo ukes. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know about across Europe, but certainly in the UK, when I started if you tried to get hold of a ukulele, you were either very lucky and you went somewhere like Hobgoblin and they got a sort of no-name Chinese thing in the window, or it was a second-hand banjo uke from someone's attic who'd had it from their parents.
But yeah, the ukulele itself around Europe, it seems to have these small pockets all came up at the same time from the World's Fair. Uh,
Yeah,
and I love
yeah. I mean, that was the seed, really, wasn't it? And everything shot
well,
out from.
apparently there were several World's Fairs where it was featured, and it was this thing where generally I think everyone thinks it was an overnight thing, but from the varying accounts from people that are long dead that you can read up and look into, it does seem that over several years, people were very, very excited to see what was coming over from Hawaii again because the grass skirts and the culture really kind of caught people's
Yeah,
attention. And then the
it wasn't
ukulele
just
is
the ukulele.
it's the embodiment of that they took away. I love that.
And all of those sort of cod Hawaiian songs that were written in America in the 20s. On the back of that, where right, everybody loves Hawaii and grass skirts and things like that. So there were loads and loads of songs that people still think are Hawaiian songs, and they're not. They're just popular songs. We'd now think of them as sort of light jazzy tunes, just like 5'2" and HE Sweet, but they were written about
Definitely.
islands that the composer had never been to.
Yeah, which is just
in
like
order
the
to
just like the
sell
world we
music.
live in now.
Yeah, just to sell stuff, basically. Yeah.
Um, we're going to have to wrap this up soon because I am too stingy to pay for the pro version of Zoom, and we only have 5 minutes left of this call.
Okay.
But I just wanted to wrap it up by asking you a little bit more about the festivals that you do because I have seen your act evolve with lots of big gaps in the middle. And this year at Grand Northern Ukulele Festival, I really felt that a lot of people were setting their clocks for the weekend by what you and Dead Man's Uke were doing. So, if your festival schedule for next year is probably not finalized yet, but you know that act that you do, that kind of open mic but not an open mic bluegrass and blues
Yeah.
thing. When did you guys start doing a lot together and collaborating? Because there's a lot of synergy there. It's a really beautiful thing to see live.
It's brilliant because we never ever rehearse and we never really meet other than at gigs. But if I'm doing a gig reasonably locally, they will show up if they're in the country and will play. So I
Yeah.
did a gig in Rotherham recently, and the last five songs I had them with me. And they did a gig in Sheffield with Manitoba Howe. I showed up, so right, you're getting up to do a song, and we just happen to know a lot of the same material,
Yeah.
and so, but we've known each other for years, and I think that helps if you're comfortable with people and you know what's expected.
Did you and Tim know each other before the kind of birth of the ukulele festival in the UK, or?
No, no, we really met right at the beginning because there was the Anything Goes Orchestra before Dead Man's Uke, and there was the re-entrance, and we ended up at the same events because there weren't many acts at that time. So I've known Tim since way back in probably 2007, 2008.
I want to just mention quickly your Phil Doleman signature uke with Millar. Could you tell us how that came
Yeah,
about? Because
yeah,
it's
I've
a,
got
it's a
one here. Yeah.
fantastic thing.
Do you know what? When before World of Ukes came about and it was Omega Music, Matt had talked to me about doing a signature model. And then years went by and nothing happened. Then Omega closed down, and then World of Utes came about, and of course he was busy setting the shop up. And then just out of the blue, a couple of years back, he phoned me and said, "I think I might have found the company that could do this." So we went, right. So do you still want what we talked about years ago? And I went, yeah. I don't want anything fancy. I want a simple mahogany soprano,
A
classic.
stylo soprano. Yeah.
Yeah, just a standard little traditional looking one that fits with what I do. And he said, okay, well, I'll ask them. And then in literally 3 weeks, we'd finalised with them what they were going to do. About 6 weeks after that, I got photographs. A couple of months after that, Matt said, well, there's two prototypes coming on the next delivery. And he had one, and this is the other one, which is why it hasn't got my name on the label, because it's one of the prototypes. But it's identical. We didn't change anything. So we were able to go, great, here's my signature to put on the labels. And then the next batch came over, and there was 20 in that, and they've been
Yeah.
selling really well. I mean,
We
sold
took some
out.
at Southern Ukulele Store
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we love you, we love Matt. We wanted to kind of be a part of it. I sold one today to that lady
oh,
who
brilliant.
came a long way, and can't sing your praises enough. And it's
Oh,
nice to see somebody really championing the soprano because there's not that many people out there doing so. So to wrap this up, because you've been brilliant. Thank you so much for giving me your
it's
time, especially
absolute
last
pleasure.
minute.
Absolute
Uh,
pleasure.
Phil, what's your website? People can look you up for lessons and for your online stuff.
Right, I've got two. I've got phildolman.co.uk, which is more about my music, and then I've got learntheukulele.co.uk, which is a link to all of my YouTube lessons, all nicely categorized, and all of my Patreon stuff is all linked on there as well.
Just aside from that, because it's much harder to self promote than have people recommend you by word of mouth, I really, really suggest you check out Phil's Patreon. As a ukulele player of 14 years, I found it to be inspirational. I found myself looking for things, learning things, and in the 3, 4 months that I was a part of it, I know that if I'd looked at it every day, I wouldn't have got through it all. So, if you're looking for a teaching resource that's affordable but robust and expansive, constantly being updated, then check that out. Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Phil. I'll let you get back to your evening, and I really hope that we can do this again one day soon.
Yeah, anytime, mate. Anytime. Lovely to
Thank
talk to you.
thank you.